To call this meeting of the Rylander Common Council to order. The media has been notified. The agenda has been posted. It is October 18th, 2023, and we are here for the City of Rylander Special Common Council meeting. I will now ask the members of council currently here to elect a pro tem.
I nominate Steve Jopek.
I'll second that. He's got a good voice for it.
All right, we have a nomination for Stephen Jopek in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
All right, Stephen Jopek has been elected pro tem for this meeting.
Is this where I talk?
Yep.
Okay. Do we do the roll call?
I will now do the roll call.
Okay.
David Holt, Stephen Jopek,
Here.
Eileen Daniel, Carrie Mikulowski, Gerald Anderson,
Here.
Thomas Barnett,
Here.
Tom Kelly, Leanne Felton,
Here.
Chris Hannes.
Pledge of Allegiance. We're not, next up is number 4, public comments. Because it's a budget meeting, there's no public comments.
We have no one to do public comment.
Okay. Number 5, new business, discuss the 2024 city budget. I'll turn this over to Mrs. Bixby.
The first one that we were going to discuss is the golf, so I'll turn it over to Oliphant for the presentation.
Is it on? Okay. Hi, everybody. Justin, I'm the regional manager here. So we've got the presentation for table of content. We'll go through the recap, the budget, the rates, and the capital requests. For 2024, with the objectives, we are continuing to build off of the positive things at the golf course conditions, marketing, and moving the improvements forward at the golf course. Build a new on-site management team. We have interviewed and hired a new GM, Keith Sterone. He's got a lot of experience as a GM, and we are looking forward to him starting. He and his wife are looking for housing in the area right now. So the 2023 recap. It's very similar to the mid-season presentation. I did add, we purchased the Buffalo blower, which was part of the approved capital from last year. I did want to note, from last year we had $85,000 in capital funds approved. We've only spent $72,142, and the only thing left to purchase was a rough mower, which had we purchased that, we would have gone up and above, over and above the $85,000. So you'll see that on this year's capital request. The revenue projection for this year, we have us coming in at approximately $810,000, so relatively flat to prior year. You'll see that the total dollar per round, the golf dollar per round, and the F&B, food and beverage per round, is continuing to climb, which is a good thing, moving in the right direction. And then just to note, the resident rounds up to prior year as well. So next slide. The leagues and golf outings, we are down. We took a hit on some league rounds and then also golf outings. So we have executed all of them well for 2023 though, and have spoken to the representatives and have rebooked all of the big outings for 2024, and already talking with the Monday League to expand their players. So I'm looking forward to Keith getting here as well to help build off of those programs and start selling more outings. Marketing impact. I'm not going to go over all the details here, but the social media reach continues to grow, and did want to note, breaking into the female market this year, we've expanded that quite a bit, which is good to see. We did a lot of digital marketing this year with some print towards the end of the year, and that did well. So we'll look to expand the print marketing, as well as I did talk about later in the presentation, some highway signage and things like that to draw travelers through. The proposed budget. So you'll see a 5% increase in revenue over the 2023 projections, with a net income of $51,000. So we'll see, a slight increase in membership, bringing members back, winning them back over. See an increase in public rounds due to a price increase. We'll see a slight climb, but with the increase that we had in public rounds this year, the dollar amount increase is really just based on the rates going up. Food and beverage, some standard increases year over year. Food cost is improving, so you'll see that in the COGS. And then with some labor challenges, you'll see the labor dollars going up year over year. The rounds comparison, so you'll see member rounds were down quite a bit to prior year. We do have those climbing back up, and then an increase in the public rounds as well. You'll see from 22 to 23, we did increase public rounds almost 1,300. Next page would be rates. So for the locals, for the resident rates, you'll see about $1 increase across the board, which is pretty modest. Compared to the other golf courses in the area, the resident rates are still 10 to 15% lower at Northwood than they would be at places like Inshallah or Pinewood or Eagle River. So very slow increases there in providing the value for the residents. For the non-residents, we do see rates going up about $4 per 18 holes, which is just right as our place in the market. We did test the $72 rate for non-residents during some peak season weekend times, and it performed well. We didn't see any decrease. So we feel like that's a good place to start in the spring, and then we'll monitor and see if we can increase the non-resident rate through summer. Next slide. The rates for the annual passes, we have annual passes staying the same as last year. So same rates from 23 to 24. They remained flat for a few years prior to 2023, so we made that jump last year. And so in 2024, we'll be targeting no rate increase and building that membership back up. The budget notes, so I talked through the rate increases. We see the dollars increase on the public rounds, and just standard increases with food and beverage. I did mention staffing has been a challenge, and we're seeing that because we're a little bit out of town, we're having to pay even a little bit more than the local rates to keep quality staff employed in food and beverage. So you'll see that labor increase on the expense side. Other expenses remain fairly flat. One thing I noted in there, a complaint that we got throughout the season, was the seats on the golf carts. We own 40 golf carts. They're 6 years old. They're still in great shape, but as part of some equipment repairs for next year, we'll be replacing some of the seats, and we should be able to get at least another year out of those 40 golf carts. We have 10 on lease that do expire next year, so we'll have to deal with those at that time. And then I talked about the marketing expenses, expanding a little bit more into the print on the expense side, but those will remain flat year to year. Capital investments and master plan. I wanted to keep the master plan on the presentation here. We talked about it last year, and so I left the bunker renovation. We feel like that would be a big impact for the playability of the golf course to help the customer experience and be a large improvement to the golf course. We are currently working on some tree clearing. We're hoping that if we get that sorted, it'll be a break even, but that'll be a big impact to the playability of the golf course as well. And then I had mentioned the capital investment opportunities and the near future recommendations. We are asking for the rough mower this year because we didn't get it from last year's. And then down the road, we'll be looking at a greens mower, greens top dresser, and then some utility carts as well will be top of the list for capital. Happy to answer any questions. Yep.
You said in your presentation about winning people back. How do you plan on doing that?
Well, our new GM will be in December, and that'll be a big goal of his, getting into the community, meeting people, talking to the membership. I understand the golf course committee has been established. We're happy to work with them and take constructive criticism to do that. But I think the experience for, like, we increased resident rounds and we increased public rounds. So, obviously we lost a group of members. We want to work hard to get them back, and that'll be on Keith, the new GM. Yes.
So how many golf carts did you say you had? 40?
So we own 40 of them, and we have 10 of them on a lease.
Okay. So I'm just curious if that is an adequate amount, because what I've been hearing is that a lot of people, there's no carts available when they want to go out there and golf. And, we have a population of a lot of elderly folks in this area that really can't walk a whole golf course. So I'm just wondering if that's an area that you're going to be looking at.
Yep, very good point. And we have, we ran into some big events and tournaments that caused some of those pains in like June and July. So we also have budgeted to rent 5 carts at least during that time. So, those are really the only times that we've had those pain points, is like mid-June to the end of July. So if we can rent, 5 carts for 2 months, that'll be a better savings. And then once the lease expires on the 10, then we can relook at bringing in more golf carts. But we want to, if we're going to go back and trade in these 50 golf carts total, we want to do it at one time rather than piecemeal it as it was for this time around. But
I'm just wondering if it would be smarter to have like a maintenance type program where you're replacing so many every year versus 50 all at once. Because you do that, they're all going to break all at once too, So I would just consider thinking about having some sort of continual maintenance program and adding that to your budget.
sure, absolutely. Oh, yes.
I have several questions. One is the waterfall project done now?
So the waterfall is functional as of the end of September. We had it running for 2 days, and then we've got to draw down the pond on 12. Sure. Yep. Joe can explain it better.
So there was some delays with the waterfall, availability of the final pipe fittings and the parts and everything that we needed, which is one of the reasons it took until the second half of September to get it going. At the last week in September, it was finally wired, tested, functional, and 2 days later, I need to start drawing the pond level down to get ready for the spring runoff. And when I take a foot of water out of that pond, the suction line for that waterfall there's not enough depth in the water. And I lower that pond 3 to 4 feet to accommodate spring runoff. So we normally don't run the waterfall in September. Once we get past Labor Day, it's normally shut off for the season, just because of the amount of electricity and everything and the cost of running it. We did want it up and running so that some of the people that were pretty adamant about seeing it could get a chance to come out and see it. I wish it would have been done a little sooner, but that's the reason it only ran for 2 days. Yeah. If there's any other questions on the waterfall? Okay, thank you.
Another question is, how many of these outings will not be returning next year?
I've personally spoken to NAF, Camp Ryan, and First Supply, which are our biggest outings, and they plan on returning. So I would expect that they're all coming back. The U.S. Deaf Golf Association, that was a really big one for us. We had some we had some pain with the carts during that week. That's a rotating deal, so we won't see them again. But we would anticipate they all come back.
All right. No more questions from the council. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We just keep on going down the line. Would be revenue.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know the next couple of pages that are in your packet is the golf information put into the format of the city budget, but it's already been discussed. Turning to the revenue budget, starting out with the very first line is the general property tax, and we are requesting to leave it flat, to leave it at the $4.8 million. And there's reasoning for that. We are subject to levy limits. And right now at the 4.8 million, we are able to honor our levy limits. We have an adjustment that we can use if we have to increase our levy limit with our debt levy. But the year that we increase it to meet what levy we need to collect, then the following year we have to subtract off that amount. And then we'd have to add back in another amount if we wanted to continue to levy that expanded amount. So right now, we're at a good position to leave it at the 4.8 million. And then just tracking down, we tried to be fairly conservative, but closer to accurate with the revenue, looking at what the projection is for 23, and then looking at the historical actuals. If you look at the shared revenue for the county municipal utility aid, that has gone up from just under 980,000 to 1.2 million. That is where that Act 12 supplemental community, county and municipal aid is going to be recorded. And the expenditure restraint went down just a little bit, but that's still at 243,000. Then going down to the general transportation aids, that reduced just a little bit, like 25,000. And how they calculate the general transportation aids is they do a look back and take an average of what our prior, it's either 3 years or 5 years of expenditures for the transportation, and then they have a percentage that they're allowed to apply to that. Then there isn't really that many significant changes except for the cable franchise fee. That is trending downward, where in 2020, the actual was 214,000 that we had collected, and then it slowly started decreasing in 21, and now in 22 was just a little bit more than 21, but now in 23, we are seeing a significant reduction in it, where the year-to-date, June year-to-date amount, the 29,711, that is the actual amount for the first quarter that we received. Then the second quarter, we received closer to 25,000, and we are yet to receive quarter 3 and 4. So to be fair and conservative, I'm estimating 25,000 a quarter instead of the original 50,000. And this, my understanding, is based on cable sales. We get a percentage of their sales. So if cable sales are dropping, then the percentage we get is dropping as well. Did you have a question?
Well, basically that, yeah, what it was based on, and that's all kinds of cable sales, or is that just Spectrum, say, or Frontier, or are they all involved?
That is specifically from Spectrum.
Spectrum.
So is that due to more people streaming versus going through cable? Is that what we're thinking?
That's what I'm thinking, but I have not asked that question of Spectrum. I was waiting to see what the third quarter came in at. Then we decided to consolidate the day parking permits and the 24-hour parking permits. Just seemed to make sense. We didn't need to have the two categories anymore. And then the fire chief and Patrick reviewed the various building permits and came up with the estimates based on the actuals of prior years and known projects.
Can I, on that one, so is a lot of that, like you said, it was on projects from this year. Is that just accounting for a lot of the construction that's going on for hotels, that kind of stuff? And so that's going to...
Yeah, are you talking about this year or for next year, the budget amount for next year?
Yeah, it's like the projected this year's for about 180.
Yep.
The budget for next year's 120. Or the request for next year's 150.
150, yeah.
Is that just, did we just miss the mark on budgeting for what?
It really is kind of a crapshoot on this. I mean, you don't know exactly. If you could guess exactly how much it was, I'd wish you'd buy me lottery numbers because it'd be perfect. It can be big, it can be small, but we looked at that, Brian and I looked at that and thought that as an educated guess and looking back over former years, that looked like it was sound to us. So we went with that. But I mean, you could put $1,000 in there, you could put $200,000 in there, and you might be right. So it's hard to really pin it down.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Then the next significant one is the payments to the municipality for services from the utilities. We have a formula that allocates the administrative tasks to the utilities, and it's based on the prior year's expenditures compared to the total costs of administrative costs. And with big projects, there's a little bit of a fluctuation. So it just happens to be that this payment is going to be based on like the 22 actual numbers. And we had a large project in 22 and in 21. But then 2020 was based on the 2019, and we didn't have as large of a project going on at that time.
Is that the 172,552?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure. Thank you.
And then the other one that is a significant change is the investment interest. And this one is, I'm not a gambler, and this one is very nerve-wracking to try and figure out what would be a conservative but realistic number to put in there. Right now, the rates are high, and we are doing well with our investments. So we're projected to collect $318,000. However, when the rates were not great at all in 21, we only collected just under $5,800. So without knowing where our future is going, we're plugging in $190,000.
It beats trying to say it'd be 318 again. We just don't have enough data points to know if that's an outlier or what. and nor are any of us, playing the stock market or bond market. So that seemed like a conservative yet realistic number to us.
And then we did renegotiate. Did you have a question? Okay. We did renegotiate the parking lot cell tower with some additional equipment that came through council a month ago or so. So there's an increase in that revenue stream from 17,000 as the budget in 23 up to 22,500 for 24. The leases went down from 1,079 to 133. That's just specifically, we have just a couple of leases, and that's the category that we put it in. But that was like the billboard lease of 400 for a year taken out, and then another lease that had expired and was not renewed. And then another big contribution into our general fund is the taxes from the water utility. So instead of them paying us property taxes, they pay us like a payment in lieu of taxes amount. And that one right now, I have estimated as $315,000. I will not have the rate until after we get the tax rate established for 23 that we're collecting in 24 to be closer on this estimate. The actual was only $312,000 in 22. So that's why I was bringing it back down from $372,000 to $315,000. It's directly related to our tax rate, and from 21 to 22, there was certain pieces that reduced in our tax rate, because our tax rate is made up of not only the city tax, but the county, Nicolay, and the school district as well. So overall, in the budget, from the 23 budget to the 24 budget, we're estimating an increase of $304,000 of revenue.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
It's really a non-factor at this point, but I'm curious. For parking penalties, it seems to fluctuate, and I'm just kind of curious, the trend. In 2020, it was at $9,300. In 2021, it dropped down to $4,400. 2022, it jumped back up to $8,900. And then with a budget of $4,000 this past fiscal year, we're projected at $10,000. Like, just curious about the trend. I mean, it really is a non-factor, but is it because of all the construction, or I don't know. I'm weird like that, I guess.
The majority of the parking is the citations that my officers write. So if we have a heavy snow year and we have some requirements to plow downtown more, so we have more tow vehicles and overnight parking. But every night starting here mid-November, we're going to start doing the overnight, and we usually wait till we get some incredible snow. So if we get snow early, we start enforcing that as of November 15th. So depending on how much of a snow year we get, if it goes late in the spring, then that accounts for that. And the other is driving around, vehicles parked on the wrong side of the road, vehicles parked too close to a fire hydrant, vehicles parked in handicap, vehicles in the fire lane like at Walmart and some of your larger places when the officers are on patrol. So I noticed the number 2 in 2020, and I think we could just throw 2020 right out the window as crazy as it was. I don't know why the numbers were low. That if people just hungered in their houses and parked and never left, and so it's hard to tell.
I'd like to add, last year I supplied $25 to that budget for parking too long in front of my studio. So
Not all heroes wear capes.
So Wendy's going to run you through the expenses here real quick, but before she does, it's important to know that we don't just build this budget right now and there it is. This is a constant process that Wendy has been spearheading for, I don't know, 3-4 months it seems like. At one point here in throughout this process, we were $800,000, in the hole. Before, obviously it's not passed or anything like that. And so I think it was last Thursday, the department heads and myself, we sat around a table and we just went through the whole thing. And a lot of department heads, Lloyd, Austin, Tara, Wendy, all stepped up and we found things to make this budget work. So a lot of work went into this, and we can't always have everything we want, like the Stone said. We can't always get what you want, but you get what you need. And that's kind of what we had here. So really, really proud of the staff we have here and the department heads we have here. They did a very good job. So I think it's important that you know that. So please, Wendy, go ahead.
So this next sheet is the comparative budget summary for the general fund. And at the top is just the summarized revenue sheet into the categories of how they're reported on the Form C every year with the state. And then also the second half of the page is all of the general operating expenses summarized into the categories of how they're reported on the Form C. And we were able to go through the revenues really close and go through all the expenditures and get it to balanced with just an $8 surplus.
Wasn't it 6 last year?
Yes.
So we're trending in the right direction.
Yeah. So the other thing that I was going to mention on this sheet is I put a calculation in the bottom right corner in reference to the expenditure restraint program. Not only do we have a limit on how much we can tax as a levy on the taxpayers, we also have a limit with this expenditure restraint program. They compare the prior year budget figures, not actual numbers, just the budgeted figures, to the current year budget figures, and we're only allowed to increase our expenditures on the general fund by the percentage that they allow us, and that is the CPI that the state calculates, and 60% of the net new construction. Something unique happened for 24 is the expenditure restraint dollar amount that we're going to receive in 24 is going to be the same in 25. There isn't an expenditure restraint percentage that we have to honor from the 23 budget to the 24 budget. They're kind of resetting the floor because of the Act 12 of everybody getting this supplemental municipal county aid, because not everybody got the same exact percentage. So we're just going to basically start over. Unfortunately, we also have to have the revenues to cover these additional expenditures. So that calculation is down in there. If we were restricted by it this year, we are within our restraint max. And the payment, I don't know if you remember, but it was $242,000 that we'll get in 24. If we go over that and we budget more expenditures than we're allowed, then we forego that entire payment. So then the next sheets are basically just summary sheets of all the special revenue accounts. And it just brings in the prior three-year actuals, the estimated year-to-date for 23 budget, and the 24 request of the revenues, expenditures, and then the change in the fund balance. These are all budgets that we've already discussed. I'm not sure if you want to just look through, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I may have missed this one, or I might just be clueless. Could be both. For downtown works, it says expenditures at 80,000 and revenues at 3,000. What exactly is downtown works?
So the Downtown Works is a revolving loan fund where businesses in the city can apply for a low-interest loan where it's a loan up to 20,000, and then it's paid out of this fund, and then as they pay it back with the low interest rate, it just builds the fund back up. So the actual fund balance as of the start of '23 was 194,000. There's just a couple of loans that have been repaid, and I think we just have one outstanding loan that has payments due back to us in '24. So there's a potential for new loans to be created.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it feels like I've asked this before, but I don't remember the answer. Are we putting money aside for the general reassessment down the line?
So the answer is we are not budgeting to put money aside, but at the end of the year, we take a look, we do like a reconciliation of where we're at, of what our actuals are towards what our budgeted is. And we do have the potential to, if we have unspent and we have the revenue for it, then we can transfer money into the special projects fund for the reevaluation. But we do not have it budgeted to send it over because we did not have the revenues to sustain that. We had to cut expenditures that were, we just had to cut expenditures.
Yeah.
We couldn't add that back in.
I guess I'm concerned, though, that then in a few years we'll have a big hit because we don't have money set aside for that. And at some point we'll have to do it, right?
Yes.
That's my understanding. But we don't have anything allocated yet.
We have 31,000 set aside so far for it.
Thank
Just,
you.
as far as that goes with the reconciliation that you're talking about, has our department heads, have they been kind of made aware of what's the storm front that's coming in as far as that assessment goes, so that when that reconciliation comes, I know in the military, when we get to the end of the fiscal year, it was like a spend all the money you can, because otherwise when you make a request in the future, it doesn't work. And I know local governments can be different. But are we preparing our staff to just make sure they know that that's a really essential thing that we're going to have to overcome, a very expensive thing, so that when reconciliation comes, it doesn't feel like we're pulling money away from them. We're just saying, hey, like if we're not going to execute it and we don't need to execute it, we're going to need that funding. Otherwise, it's going to get really tight in the future.
Right. Like every local government in probably the United States, we're doing a lot more with a lot less. And I know I'm not asking anybody to feel bad for us. We do it because that's what we do. So in a lot of ways, they're kind of keeping up right now with where they're at. And so have we beaten to their head that this needs to be thought of? No, we haven't. But we should be cognizant. I think everyone knows about that's coming. But it's one of those where we're trying to make things work, as we can and as we go. So that is important. And you're right. We should be discussing that more. Absolutely great point.
And I would like to say that I like the reconciliation route because it's not putting too much pressure on our department heads to make it feel like we're having to pinch really hard right now. But mostly just the reconciliation just opens the door to say, hey, we know you haven't spent the money. just keep in mind that if you don't spend that money, it would be very helpful to all of us in the long run, because then in the future there won't be such a pinch when we do have to pay for it or budget for it. So I do really like that approach. I think opening that line of communication with our department heads will be fruitful. I mean, it sounds like they've really come together and helped us out, so appreciate it.
And the only thing that I'd like to add to that is that was a topic that we did discuss last week, is what can we cut from the '24 budget was also, okay, let's realistically look at what was underspent in '23. Can we get something done in '23 if we have room in the '23 budget for it yet, and can we accomplish it before December 31st? Because we still have to honor goods and services received in '23 have to be charged to the '23 budget. So we did have that discussion, and I asked them, please do not spend all your office supplies and fill up the closet with stuff that might expire.
That's almost verbatim of what she said.
So then going on, there's the summary of the TIF budgets. And then we have the summary of the capital budgets. And the summary of the enterprise funds. And then the summary of the trust funds. And again, these are all budgets that we've discussed and looked at in the detail level, and this is just summarizing it. It's just pieces of the budget. And then the second to the last page is actually one of the first pages of the budget when we publish it. It's the tax rate calculation worksheet. And this one, I start populating this as early as August when we start getting our preliminary equalized values. And then we get the final equalized values and I double check it. And then as we start figuring out what all the levy amounts are, this just calculates what the impact of the city budget is going to have on the taxpayer. And the one piece, this is not finalized yet because it's not going to be until early to mid-November that the state completes their manufacturing rolls, their assessments. So it will not be until, it's usually like the day before Thanksgiving break, that we have all our final numbers and I'm able to reconcile the statement of taxes and send it over to the county to get in line for our tax bills to be printed. So what I did is we have the city assessment, we have those figures, so I added in that amount, and then I used the manufacturing assessment from last year, knowing that's going to change, but it's somewhat of an estimate. So right now, the increase in the city tax rate is going to be about $5 for a cost to $100,000 homeowner. So it's a 0.46% increase. And until we get the levy amounts from the county, Nicolay, and the school district, I won't know, and then the manufacturing rolls, I won't know what the total tax rate will be. But I wanted to present this to you because so far it's looking like we're keeping a very flat tax rate as well. And then the last page is the budget publication. that we will be sending to the paper tomorrow to publish so that we can meet our 15-day notice for the public hearing on the budget, which would be November 13th.
Any questions remaining for Wendy? Gerald?
Well, once those are published, that would be the same figures that will be coming to us on the 13th. Nothing will change between now and then.
So the numbers will be the same except for the TIF districts, because the tax increment is calculated on what the levy amounts are for all 4 taxing jurisdictions. So once I get those numbers, then I will just have to update that. So it's just the tax incremental districts that those are going to change just slightly. And then in the bottom lower left portion, the statement of taxes, then it's just the tax increments that'll change just a little bit. But otherwise, this should be, everything else should be the numbers that are presented, unless there's some sort of emergency. But from year after year, these have been the numbers except for the tax increment districts.
Any other questions for Wendy? All right, and with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. The next regular meeting is on October 23rd, 2023 at 6 p.m. Gavel.